Hello and welcome to this video session on getting started with Google Classroom. This is a session aimed at beginners, so little to no experience in using Google Classroom. I'll go over some of the basic features of Google Classroom. We'll dip our toes in the water and hopefully pique your interest in the next session, which is a bit more intermediate, and we'll look at some of the more advanced features. But this is really an overview so that you are familiar with what Google Classroom is capable and why you should be using it. So let's get started. Here is our agenda. So what is Google Classroom? It is a digital classroom. It's not just a clever name. It is a place where you can post assignments, you can post announcements, you can pose questions to students. Students can submit assignments digitally. Students can respond to your questions digitally. Students can comment on assignments or announcements that have been made. So it's really just, it's this digital forum, but it's tremendously helpful in allowing you to assign digital work and to receive that work digitally from students as well. And it integrates, of course, with all of the other Google apps, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Forms. It integrates very well with all of those. So you would want to become more familiar with all of the Google tools in order to be able to use Google Classroom most efficiently. Google Classroom is tremendously helpful because it eliminates the question of what did we do yesterday? It eliminates the question of how can I get the assignment that I missed when I was absent yesterday? Students could be at home and receiving the same assignment as if they were right there in class. When used effectively, Google Classroom really becomes a central hub for the class. Students come into class, they get their devices, they log in and they go to Google Classroom and they see what has been posted. It kind of takes away that question of what am I supposed to be doing? You build these routines and the kids really get good with that. So you may have at the beginning of every class, you may have your bell ringer posted in Google Classroom. And so students warm up in those first 5 minutes by, responding to a writing prompt or a question that you've posed to them in Google Classroom. And then you have your main activity for the class period, and you have the resources for that activity. Maybe it's a worksheet, maybe it's a video, maybe it's an image that they're analyzing. Whatever that resource is, that's available and posted in Google Classroom so all the students have access to it. Same thing at the end of the class period, your exit tickets, those can all be posted and submitted in Google Classroom. Homework assignments can be posted in Google Classroom. Students can walk away from class having all the resources, the materials that they need for that assignment. There's no lost papers. And when it's time to turn it in, that's all done digitally. And you have a very clear record of who turned in which assignment, what time. You have a copy of that, a digital copy of that assignment. It really becomes a tremendous tool to free teachers to be able to work with students individually in their classroom, and eliminates time that's spent on a lot more of those tasks that are more clerical in nature, like handing out work, collecting work, and the time that's wasted that goes along with all of that. So that's really the essence of what Google Classroom is. And hopefully I've sold you enough on why you should be using it, regardless of the grade level that you teach. Okay, so let's jump into it. For accessing Google Classroom, which is our next step, I'm going to jump into a demo account so you can see a fresh classroom. You want to be logged into your district Google account, and like most apps in Google, there are several ways to get to Google Classroom. You may prefer to just go to the waffle and then select Classroom. Alternatively, you could go up to the URL bar and type in classroom.google.com, and that will take you to the exact same place, assuming you type Google correctly. Alrighty, so you may get a screen that looks like this, and that's just asking you to select your account. You need to be a teacher in order to create Google Classrooms. So you would press continue, select that you're a teacher. If these were students, they would select student, and then you get this screen here. So to create your first class, you'll go up here to the plus sign, and you're going to click create class. Now, this is where you give your class a name. So if this was an elementary class and you wanted all of your content areas to be in the same class, then you could just create one class. It's possible that you would want to create a different Google Classroom for each of your different content areas. That's really entirely up to you and how you would want to organize that. But let's say, for example, you could just say something like this, right? If you were going to have all your content areas in the same classroom, alternatively, you could say like this if you wanted to separate and break out each content area. For right now, we'll just leave it as one classroom for for all my content areas. For section, I recommend typing the academic year because when you have a Google Classroom and you add all of your assignments to it throughout the year, what happens at the end of the year is you may want to archive that class so that your dashboard doesn't get so cluttered with classes from this year and classes from last year and classes from the year before. So I recommend that people archive their classes at the end of a school year, but it's not deleted. You can still pull assignments from the previous year, even if you've archived those classes. So if you had a great lesson on, the water cycle, you can still go back to Mr. Miska's second grade classroom from 2019, 2020 and pull those same assignments and put them into your current year's classroom. So it's just for organizational purposes. Subject and room are entirely up to you if you want to fill those in. All right, next step, just click create. Give it a moment to pull that together. All right, it'll give you some tips there. So this is your main page when you go into Google Classroom, and this is called your Stream tab. Honestly, I don't find the Stream super effective. I don't use it very often. I'll show you in the next more intermediate session how you could use Stream a little bit more effectively, but it's primarily, it is a wall of all activity that is going on in your class. So it is, think of it like, it could be your Facebook wall, all activity, announcements, assignments, comments, all that is going to be displayed in the stream. And the reason I find it a little ineffective most of the time is because there's just too much going on there. You have assignments, you have announcements, there's students commenting and asking questions. All that kind of just runs through and is displayed chronologically in the stream, and it just becomes a bit much. So like I said, I'll show you how you could weed out some of those things so that the stream can become primarily like an announcement board, which is how I think you can use it effectively. But aside from that, if you don't use it that way, then the stream becomes just a little too busy to be very useful for most, okay? The classwork tab, I'm going to spend more time in this, right? So I'm going to come back to the classwork tab, but this is where just about all the action happens. The people tab, this is where you'll see the students that are in your classroom, as well as any other teachers that you've added to your classroom, because you can add co-teachers as well. That would be great if you have a resource teacher or interventionist that pulls students out of your classroom. You may want to add them as a co-teacher so that they can access the assignments the students are receiving and make any adjustments to those as needed. So you can add co-teachers by clicking on the little plus sign to invite a teacher. Likewise, with students, you could hit the little person icon there to invite students and then type in their emails, although it's not the recommended method of getting students into your classroom. And I'll go over that in just a few minutes. And then you have the grades tab. So when you have assignments, you also have a gradebook within Google Classroom. I'll be perfectly honest with you on this as well. It doesn't integrate yet with PowerSchool, but it's starting to integrate with more student information systems. PowerSchool isn't one of them just yet, but this will be much more useful to you once it does. At the moment, you could still enter in grades using Google Classroom, but they don't transfer to PowerSchool. So it would almost be like pulling double duty to enter grades into Google Classroom and then again into PowerSchool. So it is there. It's a nice feature, but not as ideal as we would want it to be just yet. But I do suspect that that will be coming. Okay, so let's check out the agenda and see how we're doing there. We've created our class. I briefly talked about what the stream tab was. We have the people tab, which I'm going to come back to. And then we have the grades tab. Now I want to go back to the classwork tab because I glossed over that. So let's do that. And then we'll talk about inviting students to your classroom and what's the best way to do that is. So classwork, this is where just about all the action happens, right? This is where you create and post your assignments. And so you would do that by going to this create button. Everything you want to create is in this create button. So you have assignments. You can make quiz assignments. You can post questions. You can post materials. And you'll notice the different icons. You'll become familiar with these different icons the more you use Google Classroom. Right, so this one here indicates it's an assignment. That means there's something to turn in. A question means that your teacher has posed a question, so you would want to respond to it. Those are great for bell ringers, great for exit tickets and things like that, or just asking general opinion questions, getting a feel for how things went with the students and so forth. Material. One of the key sticking points I find with a lot of people on material is that there isn't something to turn in for materials. This is just you providing a material that you think would be useful to students, but it doesn't give them an opportunity to submit something back to you. So keep that in mind. If you're creating a material, that is just you saying, hey, here is something useful that I think will be helpful or interesting to you, but there's no expectation here, nor do students even have the opportunity to submit something. They can't turn in anything from a material. A syllabus would be a great example of a material. So that's the difference between a material, for example, and an assignment. Reuse post, that is what I referred to earlier. So if you wanted to pull some posts, some assignments, some quizzes that you used in a previous year's class, you can do that by clicking on reuse post. And then topics. I'll talk a bit more about topics, but those are very important as well in keeping your class organized. Now, because I want to show you what creating assignments and questions and materials actually look like from both the teacher and the student perspective, I'm going to go ahead and invite a student to my class, or show you how to invite a student to your class so that we can look at it from both the teacher and the student point of view. So I'm going to go back to my people tab, and you would do this, right? If you were creating your Google Classroom, ideally it would be the first day of school, and you would have on the board instructions. You would explain to students how to get into their Google Classroom, and then you would display what is your class code. And you can find that here under people, or actually you can find that up here at the top of your page here, class code. If you click inside this little display box, it'll make that nice and large, and then you can click on the display box even again to make it full screen. So this is a great thing to have on your smartboard on the first day of class so that your students are able to get into your classroom using a class code instead of clicking on this button and manually inviting them. Because it's something that I want you to know is that this invites the student to your classroom. It doesn't add them. So sometimes people have gone through the trouble of adding all the students' emails here and sending them invitations, and then the student never checks the email and accepts the invitation, so they're never actually in your class. They would need to actually go into the email that you send them and accept that invitation to actually be in the class. And honestly, that becomes a little bit more trouble than it's worth. It's usually easier if you just go up to your stream here and put this on the board for the students the first day of class, or of course now you might need to communicate with that with them through a parent or through some other means, but you would give them this class code and the students would take this code. So I'm just going to copy it, right? I'm going to press copy there. And now I'm going to go into a student's account and I'll show you what they would do with this code. So you have this code, you've given it to students, or you're displaying it at the front of your class. The student then would go to Google Classroom. And so now I'm in a student account. And so they're going to do the same thing that their teacher would do. They would go either to the Rubik's Cube, the waffle, and go to Classroom, Or they would go to classroom.google.com. And of course, this will take them to the same place, right? The first time they log in, they'll get a screen like this that says, hey, is this the account you want to use? Are you a teacher or a student? This is a student this time. And then exactly the same thing as a teacher. They go to the plus sign, but notice that there was no option there for the student to create a class. It is only an opportunity to join a class. So the student would then enter that code, the one that I just copied from the teacher, and they click join. Give it a few moments to work. And that student is now in this second grade classroom. He's now a member of that classroom. So if I were to go back to my teacher account now, and I look in the people tab, I will now see demo student is now in my class. And if you were in front of your class and you were displaying this for your students and they were all entering in that code, you would see this list would start to grow pretty quickly until you had all of your students in your class. And you would verify that you have all of your students in your class, and you'd be able to tell which ones had not yet joined your class. Maybe a student was absent. So the first couple of days of school, you would want to check, do I have everybody on my roster in this Google Classroom? And of course, as new students come in, that would be one of the first orders of business as students transfer in, for example, or transfer out for that matter. You would want to keep this updated. It doesn't sync to anything, so you would have to keep this updated yourself. As students come in, you would give them your class code. As students leave, you could select those students and not there, go to action rather, and remove the student. And that would take them out of your Google Classroom. Right. Okay, so that is the procedure for adding students to a classroom or removing them for that matter. You would select the student and remove them in the people tab. But again, I recommend not inviting them this way. I find it is typically best to give the students the class code and to allow them to join themselves by going to Google Classroom. You'll notice that the students, so I'm back in the student account here. You'll notice that the students looks very similar to yours, except they're missing the grading tab, of course, but they've got the stream, they have their classwork tab, and this is where all their assignments would be displayed. And then they have their people tab with just their teacher on this. So they have access to send an email to their teacher, but they're not going to see that list of all the other students. Okay, so at this point, I just want to check where we're at on our agenda. We've gone over the stream tab, the people tab. We've looked briefly at the grades and the classwork tab. I want to go into the classwork tab in more depth. We've invited a student to join our classroom. So I want to go into depth in the classwork tab a bit more by showing you how to create assignments and then how to create questions. So let's get started with that. So again, this is the classwork tab of your Google Classroom. This is where most of the action happens in your Google Classroom. And you'll just go to the create button. Now, why don't we actually start with a question? Let's say we had a bell ringer for the beginning of class where you wanted to pose a question. Whether you you're asking a question or creating an assignment, so you're going to get an interface that looks like this. So first is going to be the question. So let's say I mentioned something earlier about the water cycle. So let's stick to that theme. Let's say we just said something. Where does rain come from? Now, instructions, those are optional, but perhaps you want to remind students to, say, all right, so maybe you want to give them some very simple instructions like this. Now, what kind of question is this? Is this a short answer? Is this going to be a multiple choice? Now, of course, judging by the question itself, this is best as a short answer. But of course, you could make it a multiple choice and then give a series of options. So you could say, whatever the case may be. Okay, so you could do it like this as well. Of course, for our purposes, I think that short answer was probably the best option. So over here, who is this question for? Well, by default, it's going to be for my class, right? Are there any particular students that this question is for? So this, you have the option. You could ask this question to all of your students. You could ask this question to only a select few. You could ask it to just one student, but you would be able to choose. Typically, all students is the way you would be posting questions, but you have the option. Points, is this something that you're going to assign points for, or is this ungraded? If you are going to assign points for it, you just type that in here. So maybe you didn't want to make it 100, which is what it was, but maybe you wanted to give students, an opportunity to earn 5 points on this particular assignment. So you just type in whatever number you want to put there. Or if you're not going to grade it, you could just mark it as ungraded. When is it due? Well, if this is a bell ringer, you're going to have it due at the start of class. So maybe you want to put a specific time, or if this is something that you just want your students to give you a quick answer for, you don't need to have a due date at all, right? Topics are important though. I do recommend topics. I typically tell people to think of topics like chapters, right? So you would organize all the assignments, then the materials, and the resources that you're providing for a specific chapter under a certain topic. So let's say this is where does rain come from? Let's create a topic called, so let's say we've got a whole chapter on the water cycle, right? And so that would be my topic. And then all assignments that I create for this chapter, I would want to choose that same topic, the water cycle, when I'm posting those. And I'll show you what that looks like when I create an assignment. Okay, last option here. Can students reply to each other? So do you want this to be more of a conversation between you and the students being able to reply to each other? Or do you want to just post that question and to have students reply only to you, right? And not allow that opportunity for them to go back and forth with each other. So that's just something to be aware of. You can give them the opportunity to reply to one another. Great opportunity to teach them digital citizenship. But obviously you can probably imagine where that would become problematic. So just be aware of that option. And if you don't want it, you can uncheck it. Can students edit their answer? So do you want them to be able to go back in after they've posted it and change it? It depends entirely on the nature of the question you're asking, whether or not you want to give them the opportunity to edit that question or not. Okay. And then finally, I've got an option up here to ask that question. Or if I'm planning for, say, next week's lessons, maybe I don't want to post that question just yet. So I could go up to the little arrow instead of pressing ask. I would go to the little arrow and I could save that as a draft. Saving it as a draft means that it's going to be grayed out like this when I look at my classwork page, right? And that tells me that this is not active. It hasn't been pushed out. It's not live for students. So it's there. It's great for planning in advance, right? And then when you are ready, you can go into this by clicking Edit Question. And when you're ready, you can ask that question, right? Just click the Ask button there. You can do it right there as well. And one other option that you have is Schedule. And that means that if you knew, for example, you wanted that question to be asked, or that you could do the same for an assignment. You wanted to push out an assignment or a question for exactly 11:45 on Tuesday, you could schedule it for literally that exact time. I don't use that often. I will say I have used it before if I knew I was not going to be in class on a given day, if I was going to be absent. I could literally schedule my assignments to post themselves at the start of each class period on the day that I was going to be absent. And that way, the students had their assignment when they walked in. But it was better to do it that way versus just posting them, say, the night before, because then you run into a situation where the student just do the work and then they sit in class with the sub and they don't do anything because they've already done the assignment. Or they're doing it in somebody else's class period, earlier on in the morning. So you run into little things like that, which is when I found the schedule feature to be a little useful. other than that situation, I have not really used it extensively. Okay, so let's say I want to go ahead and ask this question. So it's going to say, okay, are you sure basically you want to ask? Just a confirmation notice. And there it is. Notice that it's not grayed out anymore on the page. So if I go over to our student tab, we'll see what we got here. I'll refresh the page. Okay, and we can see that the student has a question here posted on their stream. But again, I encourage, just like with the teachers, I encourage students to use the classwork tab more than anything else. So we have our topic, the water cycle, right here at the top, right? And then we've got our question, where does rain come from? So this could be our bell ring, and the student comes in right at the start of class. They click on that, they go to the view question. Student has the question here at the top. They have the instructions right here, and then they have their answer over here on the right hand side. Careful, a lot of them may want to write it in the comments section down here, but their answer actually goes over there. So okay, so not a very accurate answer, but nevertheless, the student, we've tested their prior knowledge, they're given their answer, and then they turn in. It says, are you sure you want to turn it in? Yes, I am. Okay, so the student has answered that question. They can still see their answer right there. I'm going to flip back to the teacher's page. I'll refresh this. So now I have my question asked. I can see I've assigned this to one student because I only have one student in my class. But typically you would have, say, like 25 there if you had 25 students in your class. And then notice how that just flipped over, right? It took a few moments there, but it just read or received the response from that student. So now I have 0 as assigned and 1 as turned in, because now there's nobody. If you had students who had not yet turned it in, then their number would appear here. So it makes it super easy for you to see how many assignments are still pending, if there are students who are still responding to a given question. So you go inside of that question and you can see you've got your student who's turned it in. You have a list of your students right here on the left-hand side, and they would say that they've turned it in or is missing, right? So you've got a very clear picture when you go inside your assignments in Google Classroom of who has turned in their assignments and who has not over here. I can see his answer right here. And that's really all there is to it with asking questions, right? Because you're not typically looking to do too much with that. It's really most useful, I think, again, to ask at the beginning of class, the end of class, or to just get a general sense of what students are feeling about a particular topic during class. And so it's useful for that. Okay, so that's pretty much it on creating questions. I'm going to go back now. Okay, so now let's create an assignment. So I'm going to again go over to the classwork tab. I'll click create, and this time I'm going to choose an assignment. So again, we're still on the water cycle theme. So let's go with all right, so this is the name of the assignment. So instructions are really important for creating assignments. I try to give very explicit step-by-step instructions. It just makes your life a lot easier. So tell students exactly what you want them to do. So step 1, Okay, so these are just some basic but pretty explicit instructions in terms of what they want to do. I really highly recommend numbering your steps and just telling them exactly what you want them to do at each step of the game. So I'm not saying that these instructions are great, but you get the idea. The formatting of that is what you want to aim for. Tell students exactly what you want them to do. So here I've got I mentioned a video that I'm going to add. So I can add a video. If I've got a video in my Google Drive, I can add it from there. If I have a file saved on my computer, I could add it from there. Or I can add a file from YouTube and I can just search, for example, I know there are some great water cycle videos on YouTube. Maybe I would. Okay, and here's one that I know is good for the water cycle. So you just select the particular video that you want and click add, and it's going to add that video for you. Boom, it's 3 minutes. Students are going to be able to watch that, get a relatively good idea of what's happening, hopefully. And then perhaps you have a worksheet of some sort that you want to add there, a PDF that's already pre-created. In this case, I don't have anything prepared. So I'm just going to go to create, and I'm going to create a Google Doc. Now notice that it puts that doc in there automatically, but there's nothing there. So let's just say, and again, this is, oh my goodness, water cycle. Not a great assignment, but okay. So summarize and complete sentences what you learned from the video. Again, this is just for an example. One thing I will recommend, this is not a Google Docs tutorial, but one thing I always recommend when people are making worksheets is give students a space, a box to write in, particularly for elementary students. You'll find that useful, I think. So if you go to Insert Table, and you just give them a 1-by-1 table. So basically just a box. And then see, I'm going to click here and drag over that. You've just given them, this kind of this visual space that really I just find helps students understand what they're supposed to do. So I recommend that. So you can make your questions something like this. You can make it larger, perhaps bold. And then question 2. Okay, so just for the sake of adding a question here, we'll refer back to that bell ringer that we asked at the beginning of class, which was where does water come from, or where does rain come from? And we can see, were they correct or were they not correct? So again, I'm going to go to Insert Table, a 1-by-1 table, and just kind of see how I hover my mouse right there at the bottom and I get those arrows telling me I could drag that. And then boom, there we go. So now your students have that visual area that they can use to type in. So that's just helpful if you're creating worksheets for your students in Google Docs. Okay, so we've got that there now. So if I go back to my assignment, I named it the water cycle. Maybe I just need a little refresh there. There it is. Now it named it correctly. So I'm going to edit it. And this is very important. You have to select here, what permissions do the students have when you assign them this Google Doc? Do you want them to just be able to view the file? That's the OK option. Students can edit the file. Don't choose that option. If you give students permission to edit the file, that's going to put every student in the exact same document, which means they're going to be overwriting each other's answers. It'll be chaos. Don't do it. There are very few situations, particularly at the elementary level and even at the middle school level, where this is useful for collaboration. It takes a certain level of maturity to put 20 individuals on one document together. And so typically at the age range we're talking here, I recommend not using it. The best option I find is make a copy for each student, because this will automatically create an individual copy for every student that they can edit, and it'll put their name on it, right? So that's the best option. If you want students to complete an assignment and edit a document, just make a copy for all of them. Again, if you were to choose view, there's nothing wrong with that, but the file that the student receives is going to say view only. And until you train your students to go to file and make a copy, you're going to have students requesting access. You're going to have students saying, but I can't type in it. It won't let me do anything to it. And you're going to have to say, please go to file and make a copy for yourself. And while that is so incredibly simple to do, it will drive you nuts until you get students to learn or get the hang of creating copies of documents for themselves. So you either train them very early on to go to file and make a copy of all their own documents, or you can just make a copy automatically for every student. Okay, so that's an important part when assigning assignments in Google Classroom is this bit there. It gets so often overlooked, but it will create chaos. If you choose the wrong one, if you choose students can edit file, you can't go back and change it afterwards. You would have to delete the assignment and then recreate it, right? You can't give them permission to edit file and then go back and try to make a copy for everybody. It won't work. So just be very careful with that when you're first creating assignments, because it'll just create, you're starting something new in your class, and that'll just create a bit of chaos for you. So make sure you make a copy for each student. Alternatively, give them permission to view the file, but then just know they're going to say it won't let me do anything to it, and you're going to have to explain to them how to go to file, make a copy. So I recommend this one. All right, I have harped on that enough. Typically, you want to assign assignments to all students, but you could group assignments. So if you had, a couple different groups that you wanted to give different assignments to, you'd have your entire list that would go down here. You can select, right, which students you want to give a particular assignment to, and you can select or create groups that way. So that is something you can do. Typically, people will give all students the same assignment, but again, you do have the option to group there. Points, you could either choose 100's always going to be their default, but maybe this is just a 15-point assignment. Whatever you want it to be, you choose. Due dates, those are important because due dates or assignments that are due in the next 6 days are going to display on students' homepage of their Google Classroom. See how this says upcoming work? This is the students. If this little box here will display all work that is due in the next 6 days. So you want to make sure that you give due dates, so that, because a lot of students will come to rely on this. They'll say, okay, I've got nothing coming up in the next 6 days. And maybe they did, and the teacher just didn't put a due date on the assignment. What am I looking for? There we go. So put due dates on there. So let's say that you wanted something due. Let's say that it was due on the 13th and you have class at, 9:15 in the morning, and it's due by the start of class. Typically what I would do is I would just go and say it's due by midnight on that Sunday before. Do I want kids up at midnight doing my assignment? No. And I would make clear that the point is I want it done by the time you walk into my classroom on the 13th. So I put the 12th at midnight. It just makes it a lot easier than saying the 13th and like, okay, what period is this? Third period. Okay, so that is, let's see, I think that class starts at 10:17. If you want to do it that way, more power to you. But I typically would just say, all right, I want it by the time you walk into my class on the 13th. So therefore, boom, 12th at 11:59, right? Topic. Remember, we talked about this when we created our question. This is a water cycle assignment. Put it under the topic, the water cycle. This will help keep your page so much more organized. Okay, so those are the main things. I'm not going to talk about rubrics in this tutorial. So we've got our title, we've got our explicit instructions, we've got the resources that are available, so the video and the document that we want them to complete. We've made a copy for each student. We're going to give this assignment to every student. It's worth 15 points, due date, topic. Again, just like the question, do you want to schedule this for a specific time? Probably not going to do that most of the time. Do you want to save it as a draft? If you're a planner in advance, you'll want to do that. You'll save drafts for all the assignments for the coming week. And when it's ready for class that day, boom, you just assign it and you're ready to roll. Otherwise, if you're ready to assign right now, I'm just going to click assign Actually, I'll show you. If I just go to draft, just like the question, remember how the question is grayed out when it's not assigned, right? The same thing with the or with the assignments. It'll be grayed out here. So now if we go in to edit that assignment and we click assign, it's going to say, are you sure you want to assign? And now that's turned to blue. So we've got it assigned to one student because we only have one student in our class. Yours would say 20 something. And as they turn them in, this number is going to start to go up, right? And this number is going to start to go down. So hopefully these will flip completely by the time it's due. So if this was assigned to 25, this number is going to slowly go up, go up, go up. And hopefully this will turn to 0 so that everybody has turned it in. And this one should go up to 25 to tell you everybody has turned it in. So let's quickly just go through that as a student. So I'm a student. It says stream was updated because I posted that assignment. Again, I tell them, don't go to the stream, go to classwork. Okay, so they could see, here's the video summary assignment. Here are the instructions that I gave them. Here's the video, here's this. So they could click on this video, they could watch the video, they could complete the assignment. Hopefully they'll give us more than that, but okay, something like this. Goodness gracious. Something like this, okay? Now, students can actually turn things in directly from here. So the student could turn in this assignment by clicking on this button right here that says turn in. Alternatively, I typically tell students to go here and press the turn in button here. And that's just a matter of habit for me. I wasn't as familiar with using this when I was using it more as a teacher. So I always told students to go back to classroom and to just submit their assignment this way, but it makes no difference at all. So I'm going to have, as the student, they've done their assignment. See, they could click on it. Their answers are there. Not great answers, but they're there. And the student can then turn in. This is a big problem for a lot of students is they click turn in and they close their Chromebook immediately and they don't see that it asks them for a confirmation. Are you sure you want to turn it in? They have to click that confirmation for you to get it. So make sure that they're familiar with that now. They also have the option to unsubmit that assignment. Oh, I forgot to put my name on it. Oh, I forgot to answer the second question. They can always unsubmit that assignment as well and finish that. So let's just see how that switched on the teacher end. So now you can see that number went to 0 and that went to 1. I can go into that assignment. I can see demo student has turned it in. I could click on their assignment. Right, I can see their answers. I can give them comments. I don't know, something like this, right? So we can post comments to the students from here. And then once we've given them a score, you could say, okay, this looks pretty good. Overall, for this small assignment, you can give them their score there and you can return the assignment to the student with their grade on it. Now, of course, like I said, these grades do not carry over to PowerSchool. So even if you give them their 15 out of 15 points here, you would still have to enter those grades into PowerSchool. Now, if you had a bunch of students that you were grading assignments for, you could just flip through each of the submissions right here. I just have the one for the one demo student. But again, you wouldn't have to be going back and forth and clicking on each one. You could just cycle through all their submissions right here, add any comments that you want to leave on each one, give them a grade, flip to the next. Read their work, give them a comment, give them a grade, flip to the next one. Comment, grade, flip to the next one, and so forth. So would see that those grades do carry over once I've given them a grade there. that student's grade is here. So what I would recommend, even though these don't carry over to PowerSchool, is once you have a list of all of your students here, you could very easily have this open and, split your screen and just enter those into PowerSchool on, the other side of your screen. So it is useful for that. It does give students good feedback because they do check this probably more than they check PowerSchool. So I'll grant that it does have that benefit. But again, it does not carry over to PowerSchool. From the student's end, and we're close to wrapping up here, notice I did return that student's assignment to them. So they get a note here. I'm in that assignment from the student's point of view. See that question, that comment that was posed. So the student and I can carry on this conversation about that assignment right here within the assignment. So I asked them a question. Don't you love my pretending to be a student typing? Okay, so we can carry on this conversation about the assignment, and maybe these would be ways on how they can improve their writing or something a step that they forgot to complete, So it can be about anything, but it's really nice to have those private comments there between you and the student about their specific assignment. That's really helpful. So if it was something that, maybe they skipped a step or they said, maybe there were 5 questions and they missed one, you could tell them, hey, I saw that you missed, number 4, or maybe it looked like you were rushing on that one. Do you want to give that a little more thought after the conversation that we've had? And then they could go back into their assignment. They can make those changes. And then they can, resubmit that assignment, right? And of course, that would be up to you whether or not you were to allow that or not, or whether or not you wanted to give them an opportunity. But it's a great way to provide some back and forth, giving students an opportunity to draft and get feedback and draft again and get some more feedback. That is what the process is supposed to be like. So this is useful for that. So that is the main features of Google Classroom. I don't want to go too far on. Let's just make sure that I've answered all of my points here on the agenda. It looks like I have. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Again, if I could just quickly summarize, you've got your classroom here. You've got the stream where all activity is going to take place, or is going to be displayed, I should say, rather. But it becomes kind of a jumbled mess if there's too much activity going on. It's really best to keep things focused inside the classwork page. Be sure that you are assigning topics to all of your different assignments and questions, right? Use chapters or units, or maybe, periods of time as your topics, but definitely create topics. Otherwise, you're just going to have a long list of assignments that don't have anything that really kind of makes them cohesive, and it's overwhelming and very unorganized looking for students, so and teachers as well. So give topics and put all of your assignments under a specific topic. And I'd say that is the main bit for Google Classroom Basics. So please go ahead, create yourself a Google Classroom, create some test assignments, and ask if you have any questions.